Thank you, Rick, and thanks to AEI staff for organizing this event on a day in which certainly there are many other things preoccupying our minds. We have one eye on the stock ticker as we speak, and we've had one eye on the political polls, certainly leading up to the election five weeks from tomorrow. Thank you, Neil, for joining me to hash this out from the other side and for bringing happier tidings than what I'll offer in the next 15 minutes. And maybe I'll open just by saying one thing about the youth vote. We do see the potential for a pretty sizable jump in the youth vote based upon primary returns. In the past, the youth vote has been brought up as a question every 4 years. Will the youth vote turn out? And usually it's been a disappointment. More so for the Democrats, for the Republicans, because the youth vote does pretty consistently skew to the left. And this year, that's particularly so, where likely voters are about 2 to 1. Youth voters are about 2 to 1 for Obama. And if they do come out and form maybe 15% of the general voting public, it'll be an issue, and we'll have to take more serious account of the youth vote in the political terrain. Now, how one takes account of that, I think might be difficult, because in terms of party platforms or government policies, it's hard really to attach those to the youth cohort. One can hold hearings on tuition, perhaps, or student loans. But I think when you look at the group of the youth, either 18 to 24-year-olds more strictly, or 18 to 29-year-olds, it's simply too fluctuating and dynamic a group to attach to any consistent political interests. The changes happen too quickly. People pass through the youth vote too fast. You might be in college, and the next presidential election, you're not in college anymore, so those issues don't really appeal to you. And within that group, changes happen too fast in individuals. The difference between a young voter and an older young voter are much more vast than in an older age cohort where you have the same age difference. The difference between an 18-year-old's world and a 23-year-old's world is vast compared to a 38-year-old, say, and a 43-year-old. Much happens in those years, the changes that they go through. And this really leads into the issue in the book, and that is that it is a short period, those high school and college years, and the transformations are bigger than any period afterwards. And that in spite of its brevity and its dynamism, this is the most crucial intellectual stage in young people's lives. I mean, getting beyond those basic skills and brain development, we might say, in the early years at the home in an elementary and middle school. In those high school and college years, this is when young people acquire the conceptual tools, the knowledge base, out of which they will form their mature judgments and their tastes. This is the period of life when you read serious things, when you encounter ideas and discuss them. And if it doesn't happen in those years, pretty much the odds are that it will never happen. If you don't read the Divine Comedy and Macbeth in high school or college, you're probably not going to read it when you're 30 years old. If you're 35 years old and you work 40 hours a week and you have 2 kids and you want to watch a football game over the weekend, you're not going to put those kids to bed and clean up and then sit down and say, now I got to get back to the Federalist Papers. It just doesn't happen. Those works require more guidance from teachers and the motivation of you get a bad grade if you don't do this. So the opportunity at this time for liberal education, becoming generally informed, and your civic awareness as well, the background knowledge that goes with citizenship in a democracy. I think this is a precious time for that, and that if we do see intellectual shifts taking place in leisure habits or subtle changes or not so subtle changes in measures of knowledge and skills, that we can draw some conclusions from that, or if not some conclusions, we can make some warnings about what we see happening, a trend taking place. And that really is the spirit of the title of this book, which my wife winces at whenever she hears the full title announced. And that subtitle of the book, "Don't Trust Anyone Under 30," of course, that's an echo of that motto of the free speech movement back in the 60s in Berkeley. And that was really not a factual claim so much as a moral claim. Don't trust anyone over 30. It tried to draw authenticity and authority down the age ladder and to make claims for youth that really hadn't been made, at least not in that strident way, before. This book really is a contrary claim, to try to move intellectual authority, in particular, back up the age ladder. And when we get to the fundamental thesis of the book, it is this: in spite of enormous advantages that the young have, opportunities to acquire knowledge and skills, access to those things, when we look at actual measures of knowledge and skills, when we trace the intellectual habits in leisure time, we actually see a decline, that there is a decay in many areas of these things. And I don't mean general behaviors. Neil and William Strauss's work is very good on charting a lot of the positive behaviors that we see in young people in the last 20, 30 years. Lower rates of violent crime, lower rates of illegitimacy, better attitudes toward parents, greater professional ambition reflected in college enrollments and AP course enrollments. So I'm really talking strictly about intellectual habits and achievements among the young. And when we think about the advantages that they enjoy, it's very easy to trash American culture for all of its idiocy and vulgarity every time you walk through the grocery checkout line and look at the newspapers and magazines on offer. But if you are someone with intellectual curiosities, in fact, there has never been more opportunity to satisfy those things in American culture and society today. If you look at the economic census, we have more museums than ever before, more libraries than ever before, 300 more public libraries in the United States today than there were about 10 years ago. We have more historic sites, more performing arts spaces. We have more educational programming on television with C-SPAN and the History Channel and so on. We have more colleges than ever before, around 4,000 of them in the United States, many of them quite affordable, community colleges being one of the biggest areas of expansion in the higher ed landscape. And of course, we have the internet, which delivers all the knowledge and information that in the known world with a couple of clicks. And yet, with all those positives taking place, good behaviors, a welcoming society for intellectual growth, when we look at measures of intellectual habits and a lot of knowledge and skill measures, we don't see a parallel rise, and in some areas we actually see a decline. And I'll just run through a few quick data points on that. If we understand reading as a measure of intellectual curiosity, and I do see it that way, in a large study that I participated in by the National Endowment for the Arts, this Reading at Risk study, we found that in 1982, the 18 to 24-year-old age cohort was one of the most active, avid reading groups in the country, reading more books and reading more literature than any other group. By 2002, that age cohort was the least active, avid reading group, except for age 75 and older. A huge shift for such a fundamental and long-standing behavior. And this isn't confined only to the lesser students. In the American Freshman Survey, put out by UCLA every year, in the last few years, they've come up with numbers of when they asked students about their leisure reading, more than half of them, 51%, recently stated that they had read less than 1 hour a week. 1/4 of them 0 on their own. And then this could be reading anything. It doesn't have to be Moby Dick. This could be reading sports books or Harry Potter. Anything for their own personal enjoyment and education.